Hi, this is Anthony from MakeWeirdMusic.com, and I'm here with Teddy Kumpel, guitarist for Joe Jackson and man of many musical adventures. Teddy, can you tell us about yourself and your formation as a musician?
My formation, yes. Yeah. Okay, here goes. I was born in Long Island, New York, and my father was a mathematician and my mom was a church organist, and my father played Broadway show tunes when I was a kid. He sang and played a lot, and my mom played tons of classical music and also rags. She loved Scott Joplin and like super early jazz stuff, so I was definitely informed by that. And I think by the time I got to be maybe in third grade, I was already playing guitar. Should start with guitar, right? I was already playing guitar by maybe 3. I was probably playing ukulele, and both my parents were in barbershop quartets. This is like...
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so my sister and I would learn the harmonies to the barbershop quartets and sing with my parents in the car when we were driving somewhere. So we learned how to sing background harmonies at a very young age. And ukulele, barbershop quartets, that's the early years. Let's see, then we move up to third grade. So I'm in school band playing saxophone. And I didn't grow up wealthy or anything, so my summer camp was going to summer school at the local elementary school. This is in the 70s. Yay, 70s. Yeah. And my music teacher, Claire Kahn, was super cool, and since I didn't really know if I liked the saxophone, I was always into the ukulele more. So I said, hey, I want to try the tuba. And she's like, yeah, sure, try the tuba, take that home. She let me take home every band instrument one summer. So I tried viola, cello, tuba, trombone, everything you can think of, French horn, trumpet, and just took it home and messed around with it. And I think that kind of informed my guitar playing a bit, because just the willingness to go in many different places and try things and make different sounds other than guitar sounds was part of my upbringing. And then so I played in concert band from third grade until I was a senior. I played all different instruments. I played baritone, horn, tuba, trombone, saxophone, all that stuff, and then also played guitar in jazz band. I had an excellent guitar teacher when I was a kid, this guy Richard Rabiton, who was a Berklee composition major, and he taught me. I guess he recognized when I was like 14 when I started with him that I had a pretty good ear, so he started me on atonal sight singing right away, which he apologizes for now. Hi, Rich. But that really opened up my ears, I think, at a young age, and he showed me a lot of stuff that I don't think any other teacher would have gone there with such a young kid, you know? Yeah, so there you go.
Did you play piano at all with your mother's influence or anything?
My mom was so good at piano that when I watched her play, I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm sticking with guitar.
And you obviously were passionate enough about guitar to go to Berklee College of Music shortly after.
Well, I didn't go to Berklee College of Music. I got a scholarship to go there.
Oh.
And I decided that I'd rather go to Miami, University of Miami, so I went there. And that was really great. It was, I think my freshman year, my roommate was Andy Timmons. I had a bunch of great guitar players around me. Brian Monroney, Mike Abbott, Tim Mitchell, who's Shakira's musical director. We were all in this together and sort of teaching each other stuff as we went along, and it was really great.
What did you focus on as part of your guitar instruction?
I think the first couple years in Miami were sort of like an eye-opener for me, because it showed me how much Richard, my teacher in high school, showed me. I placed out of all the theory classes, and I didn't have to take any of them. But also, I realized that I didn't know a lot of things on the guitar that a lot of other people knew. So it was all about like learning all your chord voicings and learning tunes, jazz tunes, and transcribing. It was a real studio. It was called Studio Music and Jazz, the program. So,
where did you go from there? Like once you graduated, what were some of your early opportunities as a musician?
Well, while I was in college, I was playing 6 nights a week, playing top 40 music to get myself through it. So 6 nights a week, 6 sets a night. That was Miami in the 80s, South Florida in the 80s. There was this thing, and you could just play and play and play, and you'd join bands and make a couple dollars. And the main thing about that was that you'd be learning tunes constantly, because whatever was on the radio you had to know, and it would get your stamina together. You have to play so long every night that if you can't stand on the stage for that long, if you get tired and not give it your 100%.
How long did you do that?
That was probably a good 3 years.
Brutal.
Yeah.
You must have burned through strings.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's humid in Miami playing 6 nights a week too.
Yeah, true.
6 sets?
6 sets a night.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Dance
you start
clubs?
at like 8 o'clock at night and end at like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Wow. And you never traveled? You just stayed in Miami doing these clubs?
It was sort of like up and down the coast of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the most north we went was West Palm Beach, but we would also go to Key Largo for a month. Or, if you weren't in school at the time, you could go do that.
Yeah. How long were you in Florida?
About 5 years. Yeah. I took a gig with this band, Rare Silk, who's sort of like, they were like the weird Manhattan Transfer. Okay. They got a Grammy nomination, and they were really a creative band. I toured with them with Rick Fiorabracci, the bass player, and Alban Burgos, who played drums for Miami Sound Machine for a long time, and this amazing producer from Miami, Lester Mendez, keyboard player. We were their band, and we toured with them for about a year, and then we all quit.
Something happened?
I think we wanted more money, and they wouldn't give us more money, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when was this?
That was about 1986.
So what's been going on,
Since
after
then.
that? Since then, yeah.
After that, I moved to New York and did what every young, starving musician does in New York. And in the 80s, at least, there was, only a few things that you could do to make money. And one of the main ones was doing club dates, weddings. So I think I did, between 1988 and 1998, I did about probably 750 weddings.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You were probably really good at wedding music by then, after the Miami dance scene, right?
Well, the Miami pop music dance scene was sort of like what's on the radio, and weddings in New York are a very specific thing. You got to know your Frank Sinatra, you got to know a couple of standards, some bossa novas, Jobim. You got to know, maybe there's a set of dance music, maybe there's a set of oldies dance music like Sly and the Family Stone. So it's very diverse, and also you meet a lot of really great players when you do weddings in New York, because everybody does them. If you're not a producer, or if you're a musician and you're only a sideman, and that's your job, then you're going to probably end up on a wedding gig at some point.
Yeah, it's funny. Andy West was in a band called Flap with a guitarist named Joaquin Leviano in New York, and my dad, he moved back to New York. He's been playing, and he met Joaquin through the keyboard player that my dad's known for a long time, and Joaquin and Scott were playing weddings in New York.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was just funny, talking to my dad, and he says, "Yeah, we got this guitarist named Joaquin Leviano." I'm like, "What?" He played with Andy West, and my dad and I played with Andy West shortly in Arizona.
Oh, cool.
So,
yeah, he's super cool.
Everyone plays weddings in New York.
Yeah.
So what about your own composition, and obviously like with Loop-A-Stre you have going on now? It's your own music.
Yeah, it's my own music, yep. Composition-wise, I started composing, and I would say in high school I was writing instrumental rock tunes, and then in Miami I started writing a lot more and then branching out, writing lyrics and putting together little productions of things on a 4-track recorder, trying to figure out how to do that. Then I had a band in the early 90s called Gnome Sane with Tony Scher, who's a bass player for Bill Frisell, and Andy Middleton, who's an amazing sax player, and Brian Dunn, who's the drummer for Hall & Oates now.
Oh, wow.
We had a funk band. It was pretty fun.
Gnome Sane?
Gnome Sane. Yep, you can find that on iTunes.
Oh, cool.
It has a question mark at the end. It's Gnome Sane, question mark. And we did some touring. We played in Europe a bit, and we had a really good time. And I think I learned a lot about being a band leader from doing that. It's 4 pretty strong personalities trying to figure it out. Yeah, it was good. And then as time went on, people kind of drifted off, and we disbanded. And I started writing a lot of pop songs. So I wrote a lot of pop songs with some artists who got signed, and I got a publishing deal with EMI.
Oh, cool.
Which, that and $250 will get you on the subway.
Right, yeah.
So I have a lot of experience demoing and writing pop songs, and I guess that does inform my weird music making too.
Yeah, I bet.
Because I know how to craft something into something that's listenable, but I also like weird things. So I like to marry those two things together. And
who are some of the weird influences you've got?
Oh man, well, weird influences. Let's see. That's a good question. I listened to a lot of early Bill Frisell, like Rambler, that album when he had 2 brass instruments. He had Kenny Wheeler on flugelhorn, and he had a tuba player, and he had electric bass and him and a drummer. It's like high and low strings and high and low brass and a drummer. I like that. And I listened to a lot of Jan Garbarek. He's a Norwegian sax player who sounds like he's playing in the fjords. A lot of reverb and I listened to a lot of Adrian Belew, a lot of Zappa, a lot of contemporary weird classical music.
Like minimalist, like Philip Glass stuff, Steve Reich?
No, I'm more into the harmonic stuff like Satie.
Oh, okay, yeah. Parade.
Yeah. And guitar-wise, I'm into all the typical sort of influences that everybody has, I guess. Hendrix, Jeff Beck.
Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
I don't meet many musicians who do that with Jimmy Page. So
Yeah, Jimmy Page. I mean, I love Led Zeppelin,
uh-huh.
but I'm not like the guy who listens to Led Zeppelin and goes, "Wow, I want to play all those guitar licks." I played them.
Of course. 6 nights a week.
I had my band in 8th grade. We played all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But I never picked it out. I don't know why. Pink Floyd. Then later on, I listened to a lot of Frisell and a lot of John Scofield, and that's about it.
I just saw Scofield with Brad Meldau and Mark Juliana.
Oh yeah.
Awesome show.
Yeah.
In New York.
I love Mark.
Do you?
Mark has done the Loop-A-Stre.
That's right. Yeah. That I wanted to ask you about that. So, the Loop-A-Stre, how did that get started? Like, did you start first with electronics and get an idea, or?
Loop-A-Stre kind of came about because I wanted to have a band where I could write open-ended songs that didn't have a lot of changes, and I wanted to get another guitar player who would just play rhythm, and I could make kind of weird noises over that and sing songs. But I couldn't find anybody who would just play rhythm. Everybody wanted to have other roles, and as great as that could have been, it wasn't what I wanted to do. So right about that time, Boss came out with a looper. I was like, well, sorry dude, you're fired. getting a looper. And it turns out that worked well for me. I was able to exercise my sort of production brain live with that, which isn't to say that I would do a lot of electronic stuff, because sometimes it's very organic and basic. Sometimes I'll just make it sound like James Brown, or sometimes it can be totally bizarre, you know.
Yeah, so how did you get in touch with, I mean, the roster of people you've played with is huge, just with the Loop-A-Stre. How did that, is that just the years of working as a musician playing gigs, you know, that you built that network, or are you seeking out these people for specific sounds or talents?
I think it started out, I wanted to have a set band when I started that, and then just, you know, it's New York City. Sometimes people can't make $50 gigs.
Right.
So I had to start mixing it up, and then that became a thing. It became interesting to have a different drummer and bass player on the gig every time, because, you know, you're making loops and it's not a lot of changes. There's no rehearsal. So it ends up becoming that they just have to bring their own personality to the table, and they don't know what's going to happen either, so it's exciting for them. They don't have to have any preconceived notion of what's going to happen. And I try to tailor what I'm doing to what I think they're going to bring, but then sometimes they surprise me and bring something completely different than what I thought they were going to bring. So it's really fun for me to get to play with all these guys and mix it up like that.
Yeah, it seems less like music performance and more like musical communication between 3 or 4 people at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, you don't play the songs for the other guys beforehand? They're generally, unless they've done a gig with you before, they're unfamiliar with what you're going to do?
Exactly. Yeah, I think some people want to know what they should check out, and I just go, check yourself out. I don't know. Check out your personality alone in your apartment and meditate a little bit or something. I don't know what to tell you, pal. That's a really New York answer, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as far as all the people that have done it, it's just, you're doing this on a Monday night in New York where all musicians have a day off. Mm-hmm. And people come out, you know, so they see it and they want to be a part of it, or I think, you know, oh, you know, those 2 guys play with blah, blah, blah together. Maybe it'd be cool if they did it because they have a thing together, you know. Right. I try to keep people together that have a thing. And sometimes you can't get people that play together a lot, so you have to put people together that never play together, and then they evolve into having a thing also.
Is this live dynamic performance a response to anything in your past, like playing through composed music by other people for so much of your career, you know, as a paid musician, doing these wedding gigs and club gigs and that kind of thing? Like, were you just craving this kind of live improvisation, or has that always been a part of your musical?
Good question. I would say I've been jamming like that with my mom since I was a kid, where she would play organ and I would play piano, even though I don't really know how to play piano. I can, you know, I have ears and I have fingers, so I can kind of find and play in between, and we would have these epic half-hour long jams that would just go from totally bizarro world, but very reactionary. If you would play something, I'd answer, and she doesn't really consider herself an improviser necessarily. She doesn't. She's got great ears, but she's a classical musician, so everything she's drawing from is something that has been played before. Mm-hmm. But I had no idea what that was most of the time, so I was just sort of hearing my way through it. And I guess, and that's always been part of my MO, is jamming and playing extended things has always been fun for me. You know, but equally I like the set forms too, so thankfully I get to do both.
Yeah. Are your sets unplanned too with the Loop-A-Stre?
I don't even think about it. I just go on stage and sort of go, okay, what song do I have here? Maybe I'll sing that song. And I'll start something and go, nah, I don't want to sing that song for this. It sounds like this other song. Because it could go either way. You know, I have some preconceived little loopy ideas that I do for some songs, but I'd say probably a third of the time I'll sing something else over it, just to mix it up and push the thing into an unknown territory.
We didn't actually say what the Loop-A-Stre was. Like, just talk about it. So what is the Loop-A-Stre, and how do you tell people about it?
The Loop-A-Stre is a band that has a rotating cast and rotating guitar parts via loopers. So the way it works is you get a couple of people who play bass and drums, you get a looper, you make a loop, the drummer goes, oh, I know what to play with that, and he does it, and then the bass player says, oh, I don't really like that chord, I'm going to play something totally to make it into another chord. Hopefully he'll do that.
Yeah. I watched one of your gigs. Most of them are on your YouTube channel, or many of them. I don't know if they're...
It's extensive, the library.
It is.
They run screaming.
But what's amazing to me is you'll play a loop and my ears think, oh, I get it. And then the drummer will come in and do something totally off the wall. Like,
yeah.
And it completely changes the direction of the song. Even just for 8 or 16 measures. Do you get a thrill out of that?
Yeah.
It's not confusing for you or anything?
I hope it's confusing. I love it when it goes to the edge of the cliff and you really have to pay attention. It just makes you pay attention when they do that.
So tell me about the edge of the cliff.
Okay, well, you know, if you're playing a gig where you know everything that you're going to play, you're not on the edge of the cliff, which is fine because you have a thing that you're going to do and it's a performance and it's a different kind of edge of the cliff, let's say, because there are subtleties that could come out in the live performance that don't come out every time, but you kind of have to cover the bases of what the thing is, right? Like with Joe, we have set parts. And then with the Loop-A-Stre, since you have no idea what it's going to be, basically, it forces you to listen. I guess that's the only way to. You're all sort of holding hands and jumping off. And
I'm assuming these other musicians also enjoy being on the edge of the cliff.
Some more than others. Yes.
Yeah.
Some of them have gone, oh, was that good? I don't even know. And then when they say that, I'm like, that means it was good. When you think you don't know, that's where you want to live for this gig.
I love that. Oh man, that's good. And what about audiences?
Well, that's an interesting point because it can get self-indulgent if a drummer, let's say, decides that he's going to be Mr. Odd Time Weirdo, loud, non-dynamic guy. The ladies in the audience will not be happy. However, if the drummer decides that he's going to be Mr. Pay attention to the room, look around, see who's holding their ears, very dynamic, super groove oriented, sometimes a little bit spicy, weird for taste, then the ladies will hang.
And your gigs are, I mean, I watched one at the Smithtown Public Library. I was born in Smithtown, so I was like, oh, and my aunt is, she does a lot of political work there.
There you go.
So it was cool, but you could tell, at least listening, there seemed to be a lot of older women in the audience.
Those older women loved it.
Yeah?
I think partially because Sean Pelton, the guy who was playing drums with me, is really good. He's
great.
He's the master at it. He knows exactly how to make it happen.
Yeah.
They were eating it up.
And you had no bass player. It was just the two of you.
Yeah, I played some bass parts in that show.
Yeah. So what is has your electronics rig kind of grown into something to support the Loop-A-Stre?
Yeah, because it's all about sort of on-the-fly access to a wide variety of sounds. I've cultivated, an array of probably, I don't know, I've never counted them, but maybe there's 40 different little tidbits of information there that can be turned on and off. And I'm generally a one at a time kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not a big fan of turning on 17 different effects at the same time and seeing what happens. I'm more very specific and let's get a dub delay, boop, boop, boop. Let's get a rock guitar chord on the downbeat. Let's get another thing. And it is, you build a vocabulary within the framework. So it's, in that respect, it's not completely improvised, because you do have, when you're speaking words, words, and they're going to come out in sentences, and right?
Yeah, but you're pretty busy. Kind of, I mean, when you're playing, it's not just the guy playing guitar. I mean, you're turning loops on and off.
Right.
You're changing the pitch. You're shifting the pitch of what you're playing. Like, what are some of the tools of your trade in the Loop-A-Stre?
That's the looping aspect of it. Yeah. The previous thing I talked about was the sound element, mm-hmm. where you have a variety of sounds. But for the looping aspect, I have a rig set up to go through 2 different amps in stereo. Mm-hmm. So one thing can come out of the right and one thing can come out of the left. I'm not a fan of like stereo effects necessarily, where things are like ping-ponging back and forth between 2 amps. I'm more of a fan of it sounding like a record, where there's a rhythm guitar player on the right and a space guitar player on the left. And so I have a way of turning off a whole side of information. I have a way of turning off a specific loop. So I have access to making 4 loops at a time, and they can all be on both sides.
Oh, okay. And so you're signal routing in addition to thinking about what you're playing, in addition to thinking about what instrument your guitar is going to be sounding like.
Yeah.
So you're thinking texturally, sonically, spatially.
Mm-hmm.
Was that super difficult at first?
I mean, it took me about 2 years to develop the rig to the point where I liked it. So yeah. Yeah. When I first started out, I had a Boss looper that has a guide track in it, and I experimented with putting the guide track through an amp, so it was sort of like a drum machine playing all the time through this amp that the drummer could hear. Right. And it was just, that had to always be there. It was annoying. So I figured out, okay, I have to figure out a way to have a click track, because otherwise how are we going to stay in time with the loops? Mm-hmm. Now, that's an interesting point, because some people would say, well, why don't you just have a basic rhythm loop going to the drummer's headphones, and then he can always hear that and play along with it, right? Yeah. Is that something that somebody would say?
That somebody would say.
I've heard that many, many times.
I believe you're correct.
So, and I tried that and recorded it and listened to it, and I decided that I don't always want to have the beginning of the song have rhythm guitar. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I want it to be ambient. B, when I'm in a recording session with a drummer and I'm playing funky rhythm guitar, that thing is not metronomically correct necessarily. Mm-hmm. And to me, it sounds funkier when the rhythm guitar, at least my style of it, is sort of behind the beat, or sort of messing around with the beat, or
kind of like what Ben Levin was talking about, where
right,
you find an equal amount of time, and it doesn't have to be accurate. That's what gives it interest.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, if I'm playing a reggae groove, I'm not going to go I'm going to go like swing it a little bit, or do something weird with it, or play a 30-second note behind just for one of them, and the drummer knows what's going on, because he can hear the click and me doing that against the click.
Oh, okay.
So he can go, oh, I see, right away. Uh-huh. And these guys are pro. They're not messing around. Right. So they're not going to hear that and go, oh no, what's going on? They hear it and go, I see, Teddy's being weird. Okay, cool.
That's interesting. So do you find that, or did you find when you were doing the rhythmic looping in the ears, was that introducing bias into your choices while you were performing?
Bias in terms of...
Well, you might hear something and go, oh, well, that's what I'm hearing in my ears. I'm just going to play to that. Like, was it constraining you at all in the choices you were making?
Hearing the click?
Was it? It sounded like you had at some point kind of a rhythm or a drum or something before the click.
Oh, was that thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that thing, it was like a beat that would always be on. So you couldn't
turn it off.
You couldn't turn it off, and you couldn't get away from it, and it sounded really gross, and it wasn't helpful.
And it's always in 4/4.
No, you could. The Boss has many different time signatures that all sound equally terrible. So the thing, they designed that thing for a guy who's playing by himself in a Holiday Inn lobby, who's gonna play his bossa nova. You know, I just called to say I love you, and he needs a bossa beat, and he's gonna play like a little guitar and then solo over it, and maybe he'll loop some background vocals later in the song, or something. So they designed it for that. They didn't design it for somebody who's gonna get weird.
Right. You're exploiting the tech.
Yes.
I'm seeing a lot of people do this kind of one-man band kind of thing, and layering percussion, salt shakers, whatever. But it seems like you're primarily sticking to the guitar in your loops. Have you explored building loops in that aren't just guitar?
I used to play like kazoo or sing some stuff into the looper, and I like that. That's it can be fun. It makes the setup bigger, which in New York isn't necessarily good. But sometimes I still do that. I really don't have any interest in it being a one-man band at all. So my thinking was never along those lines of how to get good at that. I was just wanted it to be bass player and drummer and guitar trio with extra stuff.
Yeah. Do you ever, or are you inspired by any particular people doing looping?
The most inspiring guy to me is the guy who does it the most simplest and the most one-man band, which is Reggie Watts.
Reggie Watts, yeah.
He is so good. The guy, just his feel, like how he can make something that's quarter notes sound so amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of him.
I'm trying to get him for the site at some point.
He'd be great. I know his bass player really well.
Oh, I'll have to reach out.
We might have to talk.
Yeah. Did you ever try something like Ableton, which is built a lot around these song structure components, pieces?
I've tried that, and I've found, for me, the foot pedal thing is more solid as a tech on a gig for me. You know, I know a lot of people use that live, and it's fine, but I guess something with computers and me on a stage doesn't work really well. So it kind of makes one more thing to bring, and it does open up a lot more possibilities of what you can actually do. But that doesn't necessarily help me. I think the limitations of my rig help.
Yeah.
I think that it's good that I can only turn off one side at a time, or, you know, it's...
Yeah, I agree. Constraints are a good thing.
So I use an Infinity looper.
What's that?
That's a Pigtronics looper. It's a stereo in and stereo out, and it has reverse, pitch, it has undo, it has many, many different functions. I think probably all the same ones that Ableton has, except it's in a foot pedal. And then I use the TC Electronics Ditto 4 that has some kind of weird, like, you can do stutter effects.
Right.
You can do a tape slowdown stuff.
That's cool.
I always like to sing the effect when I'm telling the person. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're here.
This stems from a New York session that I got called for once, where my friend Joey called me up and he goes, "Hey Teddy, I need you to come down here. I need you to bring a guitar, and I need you to bring a phase shifter, and I need you to bring a wah-wah." This is a phone message I got. And it's just the classic.
I know so many people who talk just like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I just remember that.
How did you get hooked up with Joe Jackson?
Joe Jackson sent out an email to probably 20 of his ex-bandmates or people he knew in the music business to try to find a guitar player who could sing and was good with effects. So one of them, who used to play with him, Andy Ezrin, this keyboard player guy I know from college, got the email and he sent it to me and said, hey, you should do this, audition for Joe. And I said, oh yeah, I love Joe. So I sent Joe an email and 6 other people recommended me.
Oh.
And then I got to audition for him and he was super cool and we hit it off right away.
When was this?
There you go. This is last summer, about a year ago.
Oh, wow. This was pretty recent for you. You've been touring with him on and off over the past year?
Yeah, this is our 3rd tour. We did a U.S. tour in October, November, and we did a European tour in the winter.
Do you play with any other acts?
Right now, no. I'm busy enough with Joe and my own stuff.
In recent years?
Oh, yeah, sure. I've done a lot of stuff. I mean, I played with Ricky Lee Jones for a month on the road.
That must have been fun.
You know, I grew up listening to her, and I think I kind of learned how to sing from her. So for me, it was a really spiritual experience to be with her and sing backgrounds with her, and she liked my singing. She was very nice to me about that. But then right after that, she went on to do another kind of project that she had a band in California for, so we lost touch. But yeah, I really enjoyed playing with her. She's great. Really freaky, kind of free spirit. Yeah. I did a background vocals gig for 9 Inch Nails once. That was pretty amazing.
In the studio or live?
It was MTV Music Awards 1999. So it was it was at the Metropolitan Opera House, and it was 6 days of rehearsal for one song, and it was pretty deep, man. Trent really, he is some detail-oriented stuff. Really amazing. And to watch him work and be in control of every aspect, lights, movement on stage, every single little detail he was into was very eye-opening. Yeah, how much dedication and hard work he put into it.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. Trying to think of other people I play with. I do a lot of one-off things, like I did a Today Show appearance with Feist once. It was really fun.
My wife loves Feist.
Feist is great. I knew her before she was famous too, and it's been fun to watch her do her thing. She's so great.
Yeah.
What an amazing
We
talent.
found out about her through Kings of Convenience. Do you know them?
No.
Like a Simon and Garfunkel type out of Norway.
Okay.
And she did several songs with them on their albums, but no one knew who she was. And great voice.
Yeah, amazing. I did a lot of playing with this guy, Chris Brown, who's a Canadian producer, who him and Kate Fenner, his songwriting partner and bandmate, they were in this band called the Bourbon Tabernacle Choir in the, I guess, 80s. And they...
What a great name.
That band became Broken Social Scene. So Chris and Kate split off as their own thing, and the rest of the people kind of went on to be involved in Broken Social Scene, which is where Feist came from.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it's like a whole Canadian contingent.
You mentioned that you sang with your family growing up, but then focused primarily on guitar after that. But I'm sure, obviously, like you sing and play guitar. Anything about your vocal development? Is that something that you've focused on particularly hard, or it's just natural coming from your family?
Both, I think. You know, I always sang when I was a kid, and I was in all-state choir. I was in chorus in high school, and just always singing. I never really sang pop songs until college when I did those top 40 gigs. And I sort of just learned by listening to Stevie Wonder and Peter Gabriel and Ricky Lee, you know, kind of emulating my heroes. I used to always joke that my warm-up was a hamburger and a cigarette for singing. This is back in the old days. Now I think just drinking a lot of water and humming a lot helps. But yeah, I don't have any real philosophy of singing, except it's sort of the same with guitar. I'm not a I've studied the guitar a lot and come to the realization that being yourself is the most important thing. So it doesn't require thought to do that necessarily. It's more like you can study a lot and get a lot of things together in the guitar, but really what I want to do is have a direct connection between my emotions, I guess, or soul, or whatever you want to call it, to the instrument. So there's no filter between those things, and just whatever you come up with on the spot is what you're going to do.
Tell me how you developed that.
I think just doing it. I don't think there's any way to develop that except you can't think that through. You can have that philosophy and say that's what I'm going to do, and then you do it and realize, oh, it takes a lot more relaxation and sort of mind over matter kind of focus to get to that than you think it does.
A lot
it's
of
sort of
people,
getting out of your own way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You study technique, you study other people's music, but there's no real instruction on who are you.
Right.
Do you feel like you found yourself musically a long time ago, or has it been fairly recent?
I think by the early 90s, I was fairly well myself. Yeah. I've learned how to do that better over the years. And I think playing with other people and being a sideman helps me find my voice within other musics, which helps me find my own voice within my music too, you know. So they all kind of go hand in hand. There's no real one moment when I said, oh yeah, now I'm who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
I know people who've had that, and I'm always like, wow. Sometimes through drugs. I'm like, wow, well, I'm glad I didn't have to do that to get there.
Yeah, no kidding. What about relaxation? What makes you emphasize that as one of your key points?
I think when your mind is focused and relaxed, you can let the more of yourself through, you know. You're not uptight about what's going to happen or pre-thinking what's going to happen necessarily. Even if it's set music, if it's something that's pre-decided or pre-arranged, you got to be in the moment, you know. You can't be thinking, oh, here it comes. Is that part oh, geez.
There it went.
Yeah. Brace for it.
So the word weird in Make Weird Music is more about that, like finding your voice and realizing that you're not someone else musically. And if you're trying to be somebody else, then you're not being weird. Everyone's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me your take on weird and why we're here?
Dave Liebman, you know who that is? Saxophone player. He played with Miles, really amazing teacher and player. I was lucky enough to sit in on one of his saxophone clinics for a day because I drove my friend there. And he said something that blew me away. He said there's 3 stages, real New York guy, 3 stages to every musician's career. You got imitator. Everybody starts out imitating. Got to do it. Second stage, stylist. You became yourself within a style of music. Very good for you. Third stage, innovator. Nobody gets there. Couple of guys.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that's brilliant, and sort of like encapsulates the whole thing. You know, I'd be happy to be myself within a style of music, whatever that style is. I guess my style is sort of incorporates a lot of styles together, which you like to think it makes a new style, but really it's a bunch of things mixed together. So it's up to the critics to decide if it's a new style or not, I suppose. Did I answer your question?
Sure. Whatever.
Question schmeshton.
Yeah. I don't even know why I'm here. No, but I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us all about yourself.
Yeah,
and
I appreciate you coming all the way over here.
Thanks a lot, Teddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. All right.